Hey guys, James again for TFBTV. You guys seem to love comparison videos, and you know I love subcompact 9mm, so it all makes sense. We're going to do a little comparison today of 4 common, popular subcompact 9mm. So we've got the popular Glock 26, perhaps one of the most popular, if not the most popular, subcompact 9mm. We've got the brand new Ruger American Compact in 9mm, a 12+1, and then its direct competition, the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Compact, also a 12+1. Then bringing up the back of the race, we've got the dark horse Kel-tec P11 in 9mm. That'll run you about $200, so it is by far the cheapest of all the guns that we've got today in this comparison. So I'm gonna look at size, dimension, trigger, performance, sights, you name it. We're gonna go over comprehensively each of these guns. I'm going to do the best I can to compare them. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna keep score. It's gonna be very simple. 3 points to the number 1 gun, 2 to the number 2, 1 to the number 3, and 0 points to whichever gun comes in last place. The best score at the end of the evaluation is going to be the winner. Now, of course, all of this is almost purely subjective. There are some more objective characteristics, and then there are some purely subjective characteristics. So I'm gonna do the best I can, but you know, look at these criteria, look at the scores, look at the comparison, and assign your own weight. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm giving you a ranking based on my personal opinion, but I'm also giving you guys a lot of information that you can use at home to determine which of these is the winner for you. Anyways, let's get on with the test. So first we're going to measure the Glock 26, the Kel-tec P11, the M&P 9C, and the Ruger American Compact. We're going to look at height and width against capacity and see which one of these guns is more efficient. Which one of these actually packs in the most rounds per package. That's really what we're looking at here. Looking at these guns from the rear, you can see Krinkov, stop. I've lined these guns up by order of height, resting on their sights. As you can see, the Glock 26 is all the way on the left, by far the shortest of the guns. Next to it is the Kel-tec P11, and both of those guns are 10-rounders. As you can see, you have the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Compact next to it, and it's roughly the same height as the P11. Now the P11 holds 10 rounds, the M&P holds 12. Then next to that you have the Ruger American Compact, also a 12+1 gun. As many concealed weapons carriers know, the butt is typically the hardest part to conceal. And in terms of efficiency, the game here is really between the Glock 26 and the M&P 9 Compact. With the Glock 26, you get a slightly shorter gun. With the M&P 9 Compact, you're getting an extra 2 rounds. So a total of 13 rounds versus a total of 11 rounds. I'm going to try to measure width at the widest part. Now to make this fair, I'm going to exclude the palm swells on the Ruger and the M&P 9 Compact. Those are the thickest part, but those are replaceable palm swells. You can get thinner ones if you want. The Glock 26, 1.145. Kel-tec P11. 1.082. Smith & Wesson M&P 9 Compact, 1.159. And the Ruger American Compact, 1.197. Okay, gang, let's talk trigonometry. Which of these guns has the best trigger? You guys may notice I've got some electrical tape on the triggers, by the way. That is to depress the little baby triggers. You know, the safety, I guess the safe triggers or whatever they call them in there. Does that make them smart guns? I don't know. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and start with the P11. That's because I already know the P11 is pretty much the worst trigger. This is my personal P11, and you guys know what I say about the Kel-tec triggers. Trigger by Captain Crunch. And as you can see here from the trigger readings, it's about a 10 to 10.5 pound trigger, which I guess isn't awful for a double action only gun. Now, it's definitely the worst trigger out of this bunch, but in its defense, again, we're talking about a double action only gun versus 3 other striker fired guns. Some people like the double action only guns, not only in carry guns, they want that extra level of safety if they don't have a manual safety to prevent from a negligent discharge, but you also get second strike capability. So if you have a round that has a hard primer, you can take a couple more whacks at it if you need to. But that said, its 10-pound trigger is not going to be better than our striker fired guns. So moving next to the Glock 26. In my opinion, the Glock 26 is probably the worst of the 3 striker fired guns. You guys are familiar with Glock triggers. I know you guys think I'm a Glock fanboy, but you know how the Glock trigger is. If the Glock trigger were a dessert, it would be sponge cake. It is a spongy trigger. You've got a lot of take up, and then you just have a weird spongy follow through, and then this dull thwack when the trigger releases the striker. Reset's pretty short, but I don't think the reset's as short as the M&P 9C. But the Glock has a slightly lighter trigger than the M&P 9 Compact at around 6 to 6.5 pounds. I know the box says 5.5 pounds, but it's really closer to 6 or 6.5. In second place, I've already told you, we've got the Smith & Wesson M&P 9C. Again, nothing really to write home about, but I think it's a slightly better trigger than the Glock 26, and this is purely subjective, but I do believe the trigger's slightly smoother. I know the follow-up trigger after you pull the trigger, you release the striker, and then when you slowly let the trigger out, you get a nice positive reset, just like with the Glock. But I think the reset's a little bit shorter than the Glock, and definitely your follow-up trigger pull is a lot smoother and lighter than the Glock 26's. So I give a slight advantage to the M&P 9C here. Again, that's really controversial. It's really into the realm of the subjective, and you could flip-flop these two around. But I will tell you, the worst trigger of the bunch is the Kel-tec P11, and I will also tell you the best trigger of the bunch, out of the box, is the Ruger American. It is head and shoulders better than the M&P 9C or the Glock 26. Not only does it have the lightest trigger pull, which isn't necessarily a positive thing, it's got the lightest trigger pull at around 5.5 pounds, but it also has the smoothest trigger pull of the bunch. It is definitely a smooth trigger by any measure. Now, I emphasize out of the box, when you talk aftermarket options, I'm not aware of any for the Ruger American yet, but of course we know the Glock 26 and the Smith & Wesson M&P 9C have excellent aftermarket trigger options. So while out of the box, the Ruger American has a fantastic trigger. If you drop an Apex into the M&P 9C, you're talking a completely different gun. So that said, this is a very close call, but we're going to say P11, Glock 26, number 2, the M&P 9 Compact, and number 1, the Ruger American Compact. Mechanics. How easy is it to manipulate these guns on the fly? Primarily, we're talking about our means of unloading and reloading the gun. The Glock 26 in Gen 4 has massively improved over the Gen 3 Glock 26. Significantly, in one place, the magazine release. You can see this is an aggressively textured and thicker magazine release than what was previously on the Gen 3 gun. What about charging the gun? I wouldn't say the Glock 26 shines in this department. It has one of the flimsier tabs for the slide release and not very aggressive slide serrations to the rear of the gun for if you prefer to charge by gripping it and ripping it. The M&P 9 Compact has a smaller and less aggressive magazine release than the Glock, but it's also a lot less mushy. So you push it in, you get a distinct click, and the magazine drops out. So notwithstanding the fact it's not as large or as aggressively textured as the Glock, it still works pretty well. The slide release, while not as discreet as the Glock's, is still very low profile and gives you a little bit more to hang on to. It just works better than the Glock 26's. I've always been very impressed with the slide serrations on the M&P 9C as well, and I find that these are much tackier than what you find on the Glock. And I don't mean that stylistically, I mean you get a lot more grip whenever you're racking the slide. The American Compact, while it has an ambidextrous magazine release, is not really my favorite. It's very small, and it's just a little bit harder to reach and apply pressure to than the other guns. Really, I'm more comfortable using my index finger to eject the magazine in this Ruger than I am using my thumb as one might traditionally do. Now, a lot of shooters might say that that's better to use your index finger because it gets your palm naturally, it gets it further away rather than closer to the ejecting magazine. But that said, I just was not a huge fan of the American magazine release. Slide serrations, again, better than the Glocks. As you can see, the Ruger has the standard slide serrations on the back quarter of the slide, but it also has some cross hatching to make it a little bit more aggressive. And Ruger clearly went out of their way to do this. That's more money, more machining, to give you a little bit more of an advantage. So the slide serrations are very well done on this gun. Now the Kel-tec P11, when they talk about depressing the magazine release button, I think what they mean is the magazine release button is depressing. This thing sucks. I mean, there's nothing to it. It works, okay? I'm not trying to be too hard on the P11. It works. It works pretty well, but it's small. It's out of the way. And to an extent, some people might even say it's superior. The P11 has such a low profile magazine release that it would actually be pretty difficult to depress while you're carrying, and some people might see that as a plus. So while this one might not be the most mechanically advantageous release, you do derive some benefit from that. The slide serrations are similarly uninspiring, and I'll tell you this, I think the slide release is better than the Glock 26's. In terms of mechanics, I'm gonna have to say there's a three-way tie between the Ruger, the Glock 26, and the M&P 9C. Why do I say that? Well, the Glock 26 has the best magazine release of the bunch, but it also has relatively simple slide serrations and a pretty poor slide stop. The M&P 9C has a much better ambidextrous slide stop and has excellent slide serrations, but I would argue that the Glock 26 has a slightly better magazine release. Then finally you have the Ruger American, which has excellent slide serrations, ambidextrous slide release that works very well, and ambidextrous magazine release. While it's my least favorite, perhaps, of the magazine releases in this bunch of three, there are a lot of people that would pay good money to have an ambidextrous slide and mag release. So for that reason, we have a three-way tie, and we're going to award 3 points to each of the Glock 26, the Ruger American, and the M&P 9C, and 2 points to the Kel-tec P11. I've always loved the fit and finish on the Smith & Wesson M&P 9C, one of my favorite subcompact double stacks. Melanite slide and barrel, excellent finish. It's got some of the best slide serrations in the subcompact carry market. Great wrinkle texture on the front strap and the back strap. And both the Smith & Wesson M&P 9C and the Ruger American have done a great job of beveling the trigger guard where your middle finger comes into contact. There are some people that say the Glock trigger guard tends to hurt your middle finger after prolonged firing because of the lack of beveling, and many people, righties, will get the trigger guard beveled on the right-hand side of the gun. Back to the M&P 9 Compact, you can see it's got a 2-slot Picatinny rail. Again, very easy takedown. Single stage captive recoil spring. Very nice slide, no machining marks. Talking about a very well put together gun. The Glock 26, in my opinion, has the best texturing. The Gen 4 has the best grip texturing. I like the aggressive dotted checkering, and I've always liked the discreet Glock thumb shelf. Everybody knows about the Tenifer finish slide and barrel, one of the most durable that you could possibly get. Actually impregnates the metal and really unparalleled in terms of corrosion resistance. Glocks are always very well put together. This is the new captive compound recoil spring from the Gen 4. And again, we're talking a very well-made pistol. There is no Picatinny rail on the Generation 4 subcompact Glock. Finally, the Fisher-Price Kel-tec P11. Very rudimentary in terms of finish. This is the Parkerized model, and even though it's Parkerized, I've had issues with my Parkerized P380s rusting. The plastic does not feel nearly as sophisticated as the high-tech polymers that you find in the Glock or the Smith & Wesson or the Ruger. It does have some subtle striations on the front and back strap. I do like the diamond texturing in the Kel-tec, I always have. So in terms of fit and finish, it is extremely difficult to make a call between the Smith & Wesson, the American, and the Glock 26. While the Glock 26 has the reputed Tenifer finish and excellent checkering on the frame, it lacks a Picatinny rail and has very rudimentary slide serrations. The Ruger American and the M&P 9 Compact both have an excellent fit and finish, Picatinny rails. They obviously spent extra money on slide serrations, and their frames and trigger guards are a little bit better thought out than the Glock 26. As much as it pains me to say this, the Glock 26 is going to be falling just behind the M&P 9 Compact and the Ruger American, and in front of the lowly Kel-tec P11 in terms of fit and finish. So that's 3 points to the American and the M&P 9 Compact, 2 points to the Glock 26, and 1 point to the Kel-tec P11. All right, guys, I'm sure that's enough me for you this week. This video ended up running like 30 or 40 minutes long, so I'm breaking it up into 2 parts. It's really the best for all of us, I'm sure. So you'll see the conclusion to the Subcompact Showdown next week. Now, first of all, I want to say thank you as usual to our sponsors, Ventura Munitions and Proxibid. Second, I got a couple exciting announcements. We're going to add a couple new features to the channel. One is going to be like a mail room or a mail call. That's M-A-I-L, guys, not M-A-L-E. And what we're going to do with that, this isn't your opportunity. If you're a small manufacturer, distributor, seller, whatever, and you want to send a product to us that you want to get on the air, then I'm going to put, whenever we get this little PO box, I'm going to put the address for the PO box. I'm going to update the video. You'll have the address right here. Send us the product, a blurb about it, like a short 10-second blurb about it, your name, the product's name, what it does, whatever. Just shoot that to us, and we'll do, once a month, we'll do a mail call. Second, we're going to start adding comment competitions to some of our videos, where we basically say, hey, whoever leaves the best comment about X, it's got to be topical, but you know, it could be funny, it could be to the point, whatever. Whoever leaves the best comment about X topic, we'll send you something from the mailbag. So we're going to have stuff coming in through the mailbag, and it's going to be going out through the comment competition. In, mailbag, out, comment competition. Actually, we're going to start that right now. So whoever can tell me in the comments which one of the 4 guns should win the Subcompact Showdown and why, the best comment will win, and we'll send you something from the mailbag whenever we start doing that feature, and we'll probably send you some TFB swag too. In any case, I will see you guys next week for the thrilling conclusion of the Subcompact Showdown. See you next week, guys.